Hi, I'm Kanan Chandran, and welcome to another round of the WED Web Chat by StormAsia.com. This is our regular series of discussions about things that are topical, that are trending, and which you will find of use in life, in work, and in other realms that you might be occupying, be they virtual or real. This is our 80th edition of the WED Web Chat. So we've been doing this for quite a while now, and we've been covering all sorts of topics, from entertainment through to medical issues, to life, to society, a whole bunch of different things that we've found of interest to people. They like to know what's going on, holidays, habits, things like that. And of course, technology has been one of the things that we've been talking with a lot of people about. A lot of our panelists are experts in those areas. And today's discussion takes in a lot of those issues that I mentioned earlier, as well as technology. We're talking about AI, artificial intelligence. Is it a friend or is it a fiend? You want it with you, or do you want to work in opposition to it? So today's panelists will shed some light through their own research and their own practices. We've got Michal Krystyanczuk, who's the co-founder of the Data Strategy. It's a Paris-based AI company specializing in crafting AI solutions based on unstructured data. We've also got Guy Hearn, who is an agent of change at Vertus Consulting, and is a lead consultant at Fullbeam. He's 25 years of insights in the media, measurement, and strategy, and a strategy professional, and he's been in Singapore since 2005. And we've got Prof. Pierre Alquier, who's a professor of statistics at ESSEC Business School, Asia Pacific. Prof. Alquier joined ESSEC in January of 2023, and he teaches statistics and machine learning. All of you are experienced in the realm of AI, and I think that phrase has been bandied about so much. Everybody's getting into AI, but do they really know what they're getting into? Do they really know what AI means? So if I could just start with the definition from each of you as to what AI means as you think, and how it's being misused in that regard.
I just want to point out one thing actually regarding this AI thing. In a statistics class 30, 40 years ago, we would be teaching linear regression. And then 20 years ago, 10 years ago, we were still teaching linear regression, a very simple statistical method, but in a machine learning class. And now sometimes we are rebranding it as an AI class, and it's the same method. Sometimes there are things a little more sophisticated and getting more and more sophisticated, like in the end, the kind of thing that would lead to ChatGPT. All this, for me, relies partly on statistical, predictive model and generative models. For me, this is statistics, this is machine learning, and actually there is no break suddenly with AI that came and ChatGPT and everything. ChatGPT is the continuation of all this. With more computational power, more data, clever ideas, obviously, it's amazing, it's beautiful. If you think in terms of AI, like a robot, a computer that would think like a human being, this is not what it is at all. And I don't even know if this is what we want in some sense. My opinion is that this is completely different. I think many people refer to ChatGPT or like machine learning now as AI. And actually, maybe there's nothing wrong with that, but we should understand that it's not the same AI as what we would call general AI, computer that thinks like a human being.
You know, the classical definition of AI is, it's a computational tool that can perform human tasks. Professor presented like the approach from the technical perspective, because this is like all that we call AI, it's still a statistical model. This is a representation of the world in a mathematical method. But from a more use-based definition, this is a tool that can perform something that usually only humans were able to perform. So nowadays we got a bunch of tools that can do a lot of things like humans, or I would rather say they can imitate what humans do. They don't necessarily do exactly the same task, but the output seems to be the same. So yes, so I would rather define AI as something that imitates the human way of reasoning or performing tasks.
Glad to hear that linear regression is not yet completely useless, because I still use linear regression a lot. And I think, what I hope from AI techniques is that I can interact with linear regression-based models as a non-mathematician and as a non-specialist. I think one of the things with some of the advanced data techniques is that they have not been democratized into everyday usage. And I think what we call AI can be that. I mean, I work in marketing and professional services, and for me, AI is about real or true AI would be about creativity, about the generation of creative ideas, which I don't see a huge amount of yet. What I do see a lot of, and which is I find very useful to work with, is tasks where AI can process information in a similar way to humans would, and therefore can aid my productivity by doing those bits of my work for me. So that's AI for me, but the ideal would be that AI would get towards those elements of creativity or original human-like thought, which I personally haven't come across a great deal of yet, but no doubt there are models being built that are able to do that.
With a lot of these things, it's a conditional upon the fact that what you put in is what you'll get out, right? Because all these big machine type things are processing a lot of data very quickly, right? Faster than the human brain could do. But at the end of the day, it's still what's out there. It's still based on what's out there, and the way it's being done, it's all quite secretive. It's only done by whoever owns it. And they're the ones telling the system what to work with, which means there's a whole lot of information out there which is not in there. So isn't it going to be very skewed in terms of the output that you're going to get as a result of that?
I'm not totally sure that it's only what you get in, even though we don't have amazing creativity by ChatGPT, like a predictive model. Of course, it relies highly on the quality of the data, and essentially you have this extrapolation prediction from the data. Generative models, not a huge creativity maybe, but they still create images that were not in the data set. It's not just copy and paste. Okay, so it might not be a huge creativity, but you still have research to actually produce generative models that are able to create new images, new text, or not creative enough maybe with respect to what guy is.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on what your expectations are, right? And I think with the large language models like ChatGPT-4, I think there's a lot of expectation amongst non-specialists that this is basically a supercomputer, and that's not what a large language model is, right? I mean, a large language model is a predictor of what comes next, if you like, in very simple language. So if you're asking an LLM to create you, a CV, a press release, a piece of text which doesn't have to have any particularly huge, new and inspiring thoughts, then it's really convenient to do that. And of course, you must apply a certain amount of checking, but it's a real boon to creativity. Now, with the art AIs, I can ask something like Midjourney to create me. I mean, my website is full of art created on AIs, and the more specific the instruction that you can give, the better the output will be. But it's still, none of it is necessarily creative in that sense, as it is, and I hate to use the word pastiche, but a pastiche of various other styles that are there. And I'm not complaining. I'm not saying this isn't useful. It's just important to know what the current limits are of what you can expect to do and not to do.
I think that the current models are quite creative in the sense of creating new ideas, new images, new concepts. But this is not the same creativity that we have in human beings. Because a model can create something completely new, but it doesn't know the whole context that humans know. So, for example, if I ask you to create an image, you will think about, what is the impact of this image? What are the emotions that I want to represent? What is my state of mind? And then I will create something that is relevant to this context. The generative models, they have it's still impressive, but the context is quite limited, and they cannot capture all the inputs that human beings can. So even if from a technical point of view, they are already very creative, it's not the same creativity that humans have.
Guy, we were talking before, and you were talking about creating the images, and quite often you don't necessarily get what you have in mind. You might get something else totally different. Is the role of this also to sort of spark off new creative ideas in people? Go down a direction which you didn't think of. Could it be used more in that way rather than to actually get what you have in your mind sort of reproduced?
I mean, from my perspective in the work that I did, that's what I use ChatGPT for. I use it to organize my thoughts, think about new areas to look at which I hadn't thought of previously, to suggest possibilities to me. I don't use it to try to answer factual questions. I use it to try to spark something off, particularly in creative work when you get those blockages and you don't, the writer's block or whatever you want to call it, where you can't get past a certain stumbling block. ChatGPT is a very good way of helping you to get yourself organized, suggest new possibilities, and often comes up with better and certainly more efficient ways of describing processes than I would do naturally. So that's, for me, I think it's a productivity aid in the areas of as I say, professional services.
Yeah, is that what you teach students?
I mean, this is very new. So this is what we want to teach, at least. Like there was in education, of course, a huge debate around ChatGPT, because the first thing was, actually, of course, a student can use it to write their homework, their essays, and it's going to be terrible. But on the other hand, our job is not to tell students don't use ChatGPT. Our job is to help them, to prepare their future careers, and they will have to use these tools. And on this, I totally agree with Guy. Actually, we have to teach them how to use ChatGPT or all these tools in a proper way. Actually, that would be held for productivity, for example. And to tell them what they can do with it, how they can use it best, because actually sometimes you don't exactly get what you expect from ChatGPT. You have already some people training other people to use it, how to phrase your question in a specific way so that you have the expecting result, etc. So we should definitely teach them how it works, how to use it, and how to make a good use of it. I totally agree with this. Yes.
So, Michael, in your line, you've been dealing with a lot of big companies, and your area is in AI. What do companies that you work with expect to get from your services, and how do they hope that AI will improve their business?
Before I answer your question, I just wanted to say something top of what Guy said. So you were talking about the writer's block. So some time ago, we created an engine for AI lyrics engine for a website helping artists to create music, basically. And from the very beginning, the idea was to help them to get ideas, not to write the lyrics. So actually, we created this system in such a way that it suggests lots of phrases written in a different way using different keywords, not to give them the final solution, but to spark some ideas. And I think this was a great approach from the beginning, because no artist expects or wants a tool that gives him a solution. It gives just, if you cannot progress with your lyrics, you type something, you get the ideas, and you say, okay, this is my starting point, and then you build on top of it. And now,
Michael,
yes,
on that, how the ideas when it comes to lyrics and all, you don't necessarily want to follow a logical path. Sometimes you want to be off the wall, off the beaten track. Does it accommodate that?
Yes, it accommodates to that. But this is a game of inputs that you give to the model and the way how you train it. Basically, what we did, there were different stages of the project. In the very beginning, we tried to train our model on all the existing lyrics. It was creating quite a good quality lyrics, but it was not, I would say, very creative, because it was repeating some patterns. So you could divide it between, the type of artist, type of music, and so on. But finally, we introduced some, kind of a randomness or creativity or temperature in technical terms, which was, and the model finally was giving some very unusual ideas. And if you check it, if you are not an insider, if you are not an artist, if you check the results, you say, this is not relevant. Why do you use this word? And apparently these words were very useful, for example, for rappers, who not only do they use, unusual words in some contexts, but they also create new words. So even if there was a mistake or misspelling or something like this, it was even wanted by the users. So in technical terms, we decreased the performance of the model. But for the users, it was giving a better results, because they were not expecting the final output, but just the ideas to become superhumans, I would say, to augment their work with the AI. And I think this is a very important point here. We are not talking, at least currently, about replacing human. We are talking about augmentation, work augmentation, that helps human to be faster, to have more ideas, to be more creative, and to perform a more complex task in a shorter time. And coming back to your question, what do companies expect? So before every project we start with a company, we try first to explain what is possible and what they should expect. Because if you read LinkedIn or newspapers, you think that now we have we have the ultimate AI and it can do everything for you. So this is the first perception that most of the people, of course, not all of them, that they have. So in the very beginning, it's important to explain, what we can do and what they can expect. And then it's extremely important to have, stages of the projects to show, how the model evolves instead of giving the final solution, because this is the process when you train people to use it, to understand the limitations and to understand the strengths of the models.
Okay, so
I just chip in for a second, Ken, and ask Michael whether you've ever tried to train an AI to generate jokes. There are a couple out there. And in my opinion, the output isn't very funny, but others' opinion may differ. So have you ever tried that? And what special challenges would you find with trying to train a model in that way?
Okay, I haven't tried with jokes specifically. I think that the most challenging task that we did was with the rap lyrics. So this was coming back to this project that I spoke about, because rap is quite different from other genres of music. And the expectation is I would say it's not like a classical lyrics, pop lyric. So we used to work with different artists who were evaluating the outputs of the models. So based on this user test, because everyone had a different opinion, and it depended, for example, on the where the artists were from. So, for example, we worked mostly with the American artists. So the perception was very different if you spoke to the artists from the east side of the US or the west side of the US. And it was because of cultural differences, some slang words, and the understanding of some, events, for example. And I think it aligns a little bit with the jokes, because everyone would have a different understanding and different sensitivity to some indirect concepts in the jokes. So what I usually recommend to every client is to test the actual use cases with the actual users, and not only to rely on the performance of the model. And it's very important stage.
Just to come back to what you were saying, Guy, actually, maybe because everyone is not aware about that, but that's actually, I think, a recurrent example, these jokes. And for people who tried earlier language models who were producing jokes, it's a super illustration of how actually this language model works by imitating what they hear. So it's very easy to start like an everyday joke. Three men walk into a bar. The first one says, but then we expect something funny. And then actually the language model, you say, the first one say, I want a glass of wine. And you think, oh, it's not funny at all. To be honest, like I tried that a few times with the earlier version of ChatGPT. I don't know if you tried it, Guy, with the new one, or is it better at understanding jokes? Or
I haven't tried it with ChatGPT 4, but there's a couple of AI-based jokes generators out there, and I can't, in the public domain, which I can't remember the names of right now, but a search will find them. And yeah, I mean, humor is so different, right? But I didn't find them funny, but hey, somebody else might have done.
How much does it get into nuancing the jokes, so that you would really need to understand not just the language, but have proficiency of the language, as well as awareness of the situation that it's telling the joke about? Or is it very basic?
It's quite basic.
Michael, what's a business model then for an organization that wants to incorporate AI into its business structure?
I think there are multiple business models. I can tell you about what we do exactly. So our business model is consulting based, and we try to create tailor-made solutions for companies. So we start with a challenge from the client, and we try to guide through the whole process by building the final solution. This is one of the approaches. Of course, we have this SaaS model, which gives you a product and you can just use it. And I think in many cases it's quite tricky because people don't have this learning or training phase in it. Basically, I can tell you about a recent example that we had for one of the multinational corporates. And they have a small team of like 3 people creating a report based on internal data every month. So we tried to understand what they were doing. So they were analyzing, lots of tools, lots of data sets, and finally creating a PowerPoint with some comments and recommendations. So it was a very heavy manual work done every month by 3 people. So once we implemented the whole process, all the analysis work was done by the AI within like 1 hour, because we needed to get all the data, to clean it, and so on. So we replaced, let's say, 20 days of work for 3 people in 1 hour. So we would say, okay, so people are obsolete. We don't need them anymore. Okay, the AI is doing the job. But there is another side of the story where the AI failed badly. These are the recommendations. the analysis worked perfectly fine. We had a good, let's say, good conclusions. But then there's a question: what do you do with it? And we asked the AI to, even with some guidance, to suggest what can be done with the outputs of the reports. And it was only capable of giving some generic answer and generic recommendation, which was completely useless by the internal teams. Why? Because first of all, it didn't have the insider knowledge about what can be done. And secondly, there is some kind of the intuition that people have, when they create recommendation. Let's talk about the example of marketing strategy. So imagine you have all the report with all the marketing insights, and you ask the AI what we can do with it, and you will get the answers. Okay, you can create a marketing campaign, or you can target people on social media, or you can create a TV commercial. This kind of recommendation is completely useless. But when the analysts they analyze the outputs, they can say, okay, maybe we know that there is a new segment of people rising in my country, so maybe we should do something relevant for them in a specific area. So it's not based on the factual knowledge, but some kind of it's based on the intuition and some kind of emotional intelligence, because these people feel that the segment might be attracted by, let's say, by their offering or messaging. And finally, the conclusion of the project was that these people who used to spend 20 days on building the reports, they could spend the same time on building the recommendation. They focused only on the strategic work and on the creative side of it. So instead of replacing their work, we actually enhanced and helped them to focus on the right thing. And this is how it works in many cases.
Could AI over time be taught to do that interpretive part of the job? Could they eventually be replaced, these three people?
I don't think so, because there's one big limitation of the AI. Like AI can imitate, the strategic thinking, but there are some inputs which at least for in the current state of the science that we cannot put. This is the ethics, the understanding of consequences, the emotional intelligence. For now, we are completely incapable of doing it. Maybe in the future, if we create a supermodel which integrates all the data from the world, which I doubt is possible, maybe it would be possible. But I think that there is still a big zone which is dedicated to humans.
I would also just nuance that. I totally agree that now we cannot, and that in the near future maybe we can't. But do we have to integrate all the data from the world to be able to have in the end an AI that would be able to take into account ethics or anything? I would not be completely sure. We might have surprises there, because in the end, if you take what was called large language models, 5 years ago, it was the same that now, just smaller, and people were clear that it will never be able to speak like us because it's too simple. And then a little more complicated, more data, more computational power, it does. So I'm not saying it will, by the way, but I'm just saying 5 years from now, 15 years from now, I don't want to, say it won't.
Yes, if I may, I will give you just an example. In theory, it should be possible to have the same level of intelligence, in theory. But just to give you another example from real life, it's like the lottery games. We know that this is completely random, and we have this probabilistic representation of lottery games. But in theory, if you knew all the variables about how it works, you should be able to predict the results. If you had all the information, all the data, in theory. And I think it might be a very similar with artificial intelligence, that conceptually it's possible, or it will be possible, but it will be very difficult to achieve because of some gaps in the knowledge.
My intuition would be the same as yours. But on the other hand, my intuition 5 years ago was that simply to map words into, like a vector space and then try like a kind of high order Markov model would not, which is technically what people do with like these large language models. I was sure it would not be able to produce a meaningful text, like longer than 1 or 2 sentences, and it does. So now I know that my intuition on the topic might be wrong, and I tend to agree with you, but I just want to say that I'm 100% not certain on this.
I would suggest that when the intelligence of artificial intelligence can recreate aesthetics, that's going to be an interesting point, rather than logic. I mean, there is if you haven't seen it, a pair of artists called Komar and Melamid did a vast surveying of about 45,000 people, asking them what they liked in a series of paintings. Now, this wasn't done via AI, but easily could have been, right, but via or a machine learning model. And the end result of their conclusion is the most horrible picture you've ever seen, even though it incorporated all the things that that many people said they'd like. So once they can understand aesthetics as well, that will be interesting. But that might come.
That would require some appreciation of more than black and white, but a lot of gray and colors, right? So a bit difficult when you're dealing with ones and zeros. No? Do you think the day would ever come when something like that could take place?
My guess is that it will lead to a lot of debate, because like some years ago, people would say, oh, language is just what human beings can do and computer will not do it. And now ChatGPT and the other like large language models, they do it to some extent. They're not perfect, they make mistakes. And the first reaction is, but they don't do it really. They just don't. And I agree with that, by the way. Like they just do computation and they give you the feeling that they do it. So the next step, they will have a nice perception of ethics, a correct appreciation of aesthetics, but we will still be able to say, actually, they just do computation to imitate human beings giving ethical judgments or aesthetic judgments, but they're not understanding it, which will be, I think, an endless debate, actually. I don't know what you think about it, but...
Yeah, it could well go on and on and on. But I think there are a lot of people weighing in against it as well, right? Or trying to control its use. To what extent do you think that should be done? The control of this sort of technology.
Can I just say something about? I mean, this about public AIs. Obviously, for a corporate AI, if they own the rights to the data set, whatever the unstructured data is, then fine. Create your models. There's a lot of discussion at the moment about a data set called Books 3, which seems to have been used to train some of the public AIs, not necessarily ChatGPT, but some of them, and whereby the authors did not give copyright permission for this data to be used for training. And I think there are concerns around the ownership of training data. It seems to me that enterprising builders of AI models will actually incentivize people to and pay people to write content that is used for AI modeling. So I think there's areas around that, and I think there are some issues around. If you use a biased data set, biased in whatever way, whether deliberately biased or not deliberately biased, then your AI is going to reflect those biases. And I think there needs to be a lot of thought about that, whether necessarily control, but certainly thought.
I think recently there was a report about book spammers releasing about dozens of titles a day, and a lot of it is just rubbish. They're trying to get people to buy it online or something like that. It was on Amazon. So things like that will happen. And I think also Big Pharma is looking at possibly using AI to cut short the trial period for medication. I don't know whether that's going to take place, or would you even feel comfortable if that were to take place?
So basically, the biggest challenge of Big Pharma was that there were so many combinations of, like even in a drug discovery, you could have all the combinations of all the substances, or all the particles that you can have to get a drug. So the computational complexity was so huge that nobody could test even many of the cases. So it was very difficult to have to get some kind of a automatic discovery. Nowadays, like the language models, they use a very interesting mechanism of attention, that it actually focuses only on the on some part of the data. So it is this is a very well-known mechanism in deep learning. So it already helps in pharma not to analyze all the combinations of everything, but just to focus on the most probable patterns, let's say. So I think it's already in use, but again, it's not replacing the scientists in drug discovery or in any other field, but it's helping them to come up with a solution faster.
Yes.
And I think this is the direction, and this is what is happening already.
Just to go in your direction, actually, Michael. So we're talking here about drug discovery, but not about drug testing. Once you have
Absolutely.
You want to sell it, no reasonable government will allow you to sell it without testing it actually as it is currently tested. So this is not what people want to shorten. It's the discovery actually of the drug before the test.
Yeah.
Okay. But I thought it was also, maybe this was just a hypothetical thing where it could have been used for testing as well, to shorten the testing period, using different types of models and different sort of variables. It could happen down the line. With things of this nature, in terms of the creative space, Guy, in your space, where do you see AI being the most helpful at this stage?
So I think that in the creative services, I think AI is going to be much like one of the examples that Michael gave us. It's going to be great at cutting down manual, boring, repetitive tasks and actually freeing up people's time and space to do actually something creative. So I think from an employment and work perspective, I think there will be businesses that are tempted to think that the use of AI enables them to cut down on the use of people. If they will probably turn out to be wrong about that, in the sense that but if you are doing something that is very process orientated, then it's very possible that an AI may be able to do that process more efficiently and more cheaply than you can, and you might be wanting to think about skills that an AI cannot replicate, at least in this moment of time. I can see basic marketing materials being created by AI. I can see search strategies through AI. A lot of the trading is already done programmatically, which is model-based, and algorithm-based and decision tree-based, if not AI in the true sense of the word. I can see that being enhanced, but as Michael said earlier, the recommendation, the spark of creativity that makes campaign A a massive success and campaign B, which looks quite similar in many ways, not. You need humans to do that, and freeing up their creative ability will be extremely useful.
How about you, Michael? In your areas, where do you see AI being the most effectively used?
This is how we are using it now in optimizing the processes. So I have to say the same thing as Guy. I just wanted to add one more point about the AI in general, because of course it helps us a lot in optimizing these processes, in creating some new content. But in my view, AI it's a little bit like the nuclear power. It means that we can use it to have the power plants and have energy and use it to the benefit of everyone, but we can also create nuclear bombs. So what I mean by that, in the marketing field, it will be the propaganda and using AI to influence people' way of thinking. It might be also in other fields by creating some huge consequences of a mistake. Let's say in the automotive industry, if AI predicts some pieces of cars, and if it fails, it can have a huge consequences. And even if we are talking only about the positive way of the AI, and we have to strengthen and use it even more in everyday life, because it will help us to be more productive and more efficient. But on the other side, we cannot forget about also the dangers and consequences of the AI. And this is both in a personal life and in the professional life. And this is why we need to also teach people a responsible way of using AI at work and on a personal basis.
I would with it and just would say something like, in some sense, it might be said of any technology, right? We have a new technology, it gives power to do things that can help people or that can hurt people. But in some sense, we expect usually, new laws and that the government will protect us. In this case, the problem is that it's going much faster than the other examples we have in mind. And because it's going much faster, first, they don't always have the time to vote the adequate laws to protect us. And also, sorry to say about that, but especially when I see recent debates we had in France about that, sometimes politicians in France, they don't have the knowledge also for that. And they don't involve enough experts, I think, in the discussion.
It's all sort of open ground at this stage, right? A lot of opportunities for people to weigh in with their perspectives. We are at the end of the session, and I just wanted to get one last thought on AI from each of you, something that would help the viewer get a better fix on it or see its potential.
We hear a lot, actually, about the evil that can be done. But I read, actually, this morning, an opinion paper written by a scientist, David Dono, that was very optimistic and correlating all the recent advances to actually better practice in science with a lot of open source code, with a lot of data sets that are publicly available, and with many scientists not only, publishing their results, but also making the code available and the other one challenging their works, etc. And saying that it can really be used for the good, and it will go beyond the current applications, actually. All this in the beginning was designed indeed for business, but also for, drug discovery. There will be many actually applications. If we do things right, it will be actually very exciting and very, very useful.
Let's embrace AI in a responsible way.
But your sense of responsibility could be different to another person's sense of responsibility and different to yet another person. So who's going to decide what's responsible?
I think it can be based on the consciousness of, if we understand what it is and what it is for, then we can certainly have a better understanding of responsibility.
Yeah, I think that'll be a hard one for AI itself to get its head around.
I would say do a little research and think about how AI can help you with what you're trying to do with your work, and be realistic in the expectations of what it can at this stage and what it can't do with what you have. And if you're thinking that you're in a business and you have some data, think about whether the extent of that data, the quality of that data, and whether people like Michal can help you to build a useful use case with that. So thought, I think about it, not a threat, an aid.
When I sent out the original invitation to this webinar, one of the responses I got was, AI is a tool. One can take a hammer and build a house or bash someone's brains out with it. It is an AI that is either friend or fiend, but those who use it. So I guess, it's one of those things where it can be weaponized, or it can be made extremely useful. So maybe we have to think, as Guy pointed out, and as all of you have alluded to, think responsibly and act in good faith. And thanks, Prof. Pierre, Alquier, Michal Krystyanczuk, and Guy Hearn for all your various inputs from different aspects of this AI discussion.